Everyone, welcome to Time to Awaken. This is Michael, and below you'll find my YouTube channels, including Rumble and then Mark of the Beast videos. I now have them on both Rumble and YouTube, so you can watch them both. And then also my email. Okay, this one is called 70 Weeks as Years, or 1 week is not equal to 7 years, according to the Bible. All right, so I started creating this. I think it was last year or so. I started putting together a I don't know, the spreadsheet and all that kind of stuff to go with it. Started creating it, and it kind of got lost. I did a different video and called it number 70, which was, kind of interesting in itself that it was number 70. And this one just kind of got lost in the mix, and I was kind of going through, and I wanted to do a video about this again because it was a lot of more stuff than I had before. And one thing led to another. I realized, oh my gosh, it never actually got completed. So we've been talking about the 70 weeks and how we already have two 70-week or 70-year timelines already in place, and we've been talking about them now for a long time. But I wanted to do a video because essentially what ends up happening here is for the longest time, right, forever, the church has been teaching us that 1 week equals 1 week equals 7 years, right? That's what we've always been taught, and they've always taken from Daniel, and it's what the church bases its entire 7 year tribulation plan on, from this one verse about 1 week, right? Um, and so I wanted to show how wrong that really is, and show it and prove it out that it can't be 1 week equals 7 years. It just doesn't work according to the Bible. Now, can God make it work? I'm sure he can. I try not to put God in a box. All right. Um, so this whole concept of this um, 1 week equals 7 years kind of takes me back to the whole no man knows the day or the hour, which we have talked about for the last 3 years since I've been on YouTube, and even before that, right? There's no such thing in the Bible, and that's a fact. And the same thing applies here to Daniel, and it's like they've taken stuff out of context and created their own belief system, and the entire church, at least those who believe that there is an end time with a rapture and all that, they've completely twisted the entire biblical truth by taking scripture out of context. And yet it shows us if they just go in there and read it for themselves, they find the truth, or could find the truth, but they don't. They're told what to think, what to believe, and then they just run with it, and they never even look twice because that's what their scholars, teachers, preachers, whatever, tell them is true. But it's amazing the millions of people who have looked at this or gone through this and never questioned it, never looked at it on their own. All right, so we're going to go through a series of verses from Daniel, specifically mostly Daniel 9, which is where all this comes from, okay? And just like the mantra above, the proof is within the very same chapter, or in case of the no man knows the day or the hour, it's the verse before it, right? And some of the verses after it, etc. So the proof is actually in the very same chapter that they use to prove their entire end time understanding. All right? So let's get to it. First one, Daniel 9:2. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of the years, whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. Okay? So right here, okay, in these very words in Daniel 9, he directly tells us that the desolations would take about 70 years to complete. Okay? And I've already shown this whole timeline, actually dual timelines. One shows the beginning from Luke, and the other one from Matthew shows the end of the tribulation time, okay, when it will end. So I want to show you how simple it is. Just dismantle the idea of a week being 7 years. And if that's so, then it would make this very verse and those that follow in Jeremiah, okay, a lie. Okay? If what they say is true, then everything in Daniel 9 and Jeremiah, where it also talks about 70 years, it makes it a complete lie. So basically, they're calling the Bible a lie. So the question is, which will you believe? The Bible and what it says, or one of man's theoretical teachings on biblical text? So let's find out. So earlier we just got done looking at the verse in Daniel, and it mentions Jeremiah, right? Jeremiah said such. So I went and I pulled up Jeremiah, and there's 3 verses in Jeremiah that talk about 70 years, okay? And this whole land be a desolation and an astonishment, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. And it shall come to pass when 70 years are accomplished that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith the Lord, for their iniquity and the land of the Chaldeans, and will make it perpetual desolations. And I will bring upon that land all of my words which I have pronounced against it, even all that is written in this book, which Jeremiah has prophesied against all the nations. Jeremiah 25:11 through 13. All right, so God told Jeremiah the same thing here as he did to Daniel in a dream back in Daniel 9, right? In both cases, it was 70 years. All right, then we go on Jeremiah 29:10. For thus saith the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word toward you, in causing you to return to this place. Jeremiah 29:10. Okay, again, here's Jeremiah telling us that at the end of 70 years, he will destroy Babylon for good and bring Israel and Judah back together, and they will get all the land that is due to them. Okay? Christ will rule over them for 1,000 years. All right, so back to Daniel 9. All right? Um, Yea, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. And he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. At the beginning of thy supplications, the commandment came forth, and I have come to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Therefore understand the matter and consider the vision. Daniel 9:21 through 23. Okay? So this is where it really gets interesting. Daniel saw Gabriel in his vision. Now Gabriel comes before him, informing Daniel that he has come to show Daniel the meaning of the vision above the 70 years, right? And above, Daniel describes the times in years, but Gabriel is now going to use some slightly different language. Again, Daniel received a dream. Gabriel is now here to explain the same dream. Above, it was 70 years. Okay? 70 weeks. Now, this is Gabriel speaking now. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Daniel 9:24. Okay, so this is Gabriel. Gabriel is now speaking in his own prophetic language, and he's speaking about what we saw at the very beginning, that first verse we looked at. All right. Um, Above, it was 70 years. Has that changed? No. 70 years is still 70 years. And 70 weeks is also 70 years because this is him explaining the same 70 years as we saw just a few minutes ago. Okay? So we have it. Gabriel has changed the word year to the word week, but did the vision change? Were Jeremiah and Daniel both wrong in their understanding of it being 70 years? Of course not. Gabriel is just using a prophetical word that still describes 70 years. He used the word week. He is literally pointing to the year that Israel took over the Temple Mount and the rest of Jerusalem. And from that count until the end of the tribulation is 70 years. Nothing's changed. Do you see that? We started at the beginning with Daniel's dream. Gabriel comes on the scene and explains the dream to Daniel using a different word. Went from years to weeks, right? But somehow people have taken the understanding from a Strong's Concordance and twisted the meaning of this and turned it into 1 week equals 7 years. And then now what do we have? We have, if that or two, that's 490 years. Okay. And I know people are out there looking and searching and whatever, but the reality is this is a 70-year prophecy. Okay. We are in the midst of that 70-year prophecy. That 70-year prophecy started the day that Israel became a nation. Okay? All right. This is where things get interesting because they split off from here. Okay? They completely split off. Um, and what we have here is a breakdown of those 70 years into different timelines throughout that 70 years. God has done that before in other places. He's doing it right here. And so he's literally breaking this down into different sections. Okay. So know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince shall be 7 weeks. Okay. Notice that's a capital P there. We were talking about Christ. And 62 weeks. The street shall be built again. Did you hear that? The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. During tribulation. Do you understand that? During tribulation, the streets and the wall are built again. There is no temple here. If you go back and you read in Hebrew, the book of Hebrews in the New Testament, it tells us, it goes through scripture and it tells us in Hebrews that there was the first temple and what happened there. The second temple was slightly different, and then Christ's death brought on the third temple. The third temple is Christ, and Christ's skin is the veil. Okay, that's what it tells us in Hebrews. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. Now, we've talked about some of this before. We've seen this in other videos since then, okay, where I've actually done videos about Daniel specifically. So the Messiah is cut off, meaning he has to leave. This is actually at a 3.5 year point into trumpets, okay? Um, he's got a group of people that he has to save because Satan himself, notice, and the people of the prince, little p, that's Satan, that shall come shall destroy the city. Okay, so Jesus has been here since the second rapture, and at the second rapture, he remains and he takes a series of people and they go and they start rebuilding um, a so there's a remnant, okay? There's a remnant, and that remnant go with him, just like we saw in Ezra and Nehemiah with the rebuilding of the city there. That's the storyline we're following here, by the way. Destroy the city and the sanctuary. All right, so they're destroying the city again, and they'll probably continue to build a sanctuary more or less to the point of something to worship Satan with. Okay, and then at the end shall be with a flood. We see that in Revelation. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined because there's going to be total annihilation, a total destruction, right? So war going on. And from this point on, we know that it must be 70 weeks. Okay? So what about these numbers above? Simple. Again, I say it again. God has broken these times down into some specific sections. Okay? This is where truth comes to roost. The 62 weeks as years represent the number of years from the taking the rest of Jerusalem, the fig tree, okay? Jerusalem and Judah, okay? Until the end of the 7 years of seals, okay? And at this time, there will be the second rapture of the left behind church. And then we have the next 7 years, which takes us to the end of trumpets, okay? So we have this perfect breakdown according to God. And Jesus will choose a group of people that will return to Jerusalem during the first 3.5 years of trumpets to rebuild the city and the streets. Just like it said above, right, during the tribulation, during the trumpets period, the 7 years of trumpets, and we will see more about all of this further below, okay? I break this down further towards the end. But 3.5 years in, we're gonna see more about that, how that breaks down, right? The 14 years tribulation, and this is the last 3.5 years of the 14 years. Okay. Well, the 3.5 years that we're talking about here actually is the first 3.5 years of trumpets. All right, and then as the years uh, mark halfway, okay, of trumpets at the 3.5 year mark, halfway through trumpets, Satan will show up to destroy the city again. Probably to literally destroy this time what everybody's been looking for before. Okay, this is where they get it wrong because they've been looking straight to the end and not looking at what's going to happen before. Okay, this is common. They go straight to the end. They look at Matthew, oh Jesus coming back, and that's it. There's nothing for the Gentiles. We're all going at the same time, but they fail to look at God's law, which states there's 3 parts to the end. Right? We have sorry, my mind just blanked there. We have Deuteronomy 16 and we have Leviticus 23. Sorry about that. Um, and it shows us that there's 3 parts to any harvest. Okay, 3 parts to a harvest. Um, and so Jesus will take his remnant to a safe place where they will be taken care of and fed until the final 3.5 years is complete. Okay, so yeah, we're breaking this down into multiple 3.5 year periods. All right. And then we have the last year. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, 1 year. In the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So I don't believe this is the Antichrist. The Antichrist has already destroyed the city, been abominating the sanctuary, probably doing sacrifices to himself, because he wants to be God. And Jesus right here is telling us that he's going to destroy, not create, but destroy all of it, right? To make it desolate until the end. I believe this is Jesus himself, not the Antichrist, not Satan, but Jesus. And we're going to see below how some of this plays out, okay? We're going to go to a completely different book to break this down a little further. And that's what we have to do some digging. Jesus broke the covenant when Satan came down, right? We saw that. We read that. And there were abominations being done and sacrifices to Satan. And Christ will bring this all to an end. Okay, so more on this below. And technically, this is to prove out the fact that 1 week does indeed equal 1 year. All right, so I have two more verses further below, okay, right below us here, to show that this is true. All right, so I've been using this for a long time, and I know people are going to twist this and turn it and tell me that that's not true, but just looking at what you've already seen, right, it already tells you so. By the way, if we go back here um, and we look at all of this, from the standpoint of 62 plus 7, that's 69 weeks. You add the last week, and there's your 70 years again. Again, God has broken this down into 70-week or 70-year periods. And all that's changed here is Gabriel is is explaining it to Daniel, right? How his dream works, and it's still 70 years. That's all. That's the only thing that changed here. Okay, so I can't understand how people cannot see that. But all right, here's another one. So this is the law of the new wife. Okay, here's another law. When a man hath taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war, neither shall he be charged with any business, but he shall be free at home 1 year, and shall cheer up his wife which he hath taken. Deuteronomy 24:5. Okay, so once again, we're working in years here. And this is the law of the marriage, okay, to a wife. They will do no business, go to war, right, for 1 year. Now, keep this in mind as we read the next verse, okay? This is a play on Jacob's trouble. Now, if anybody knows anything about Jacob's trouble, Jeremiah 30 tells us that Jacob's trouble um, is what it is in the end. Now, again, because of Daniel and the false teachings, everybody thinks that Jacob's trouble is only 7 years. But if you go look it up, Genesis 31:41 sums it all up, and it tells us it's 20 years. Now, as I do this, I believe this is March 19th, 18th or 19th um, of 2025. As I do this, we're at the end of the 7 years already. We're actually into the tribulation years, just hasn't started yet. Okay, um, and so we have to break this down into the 7 easy years, 7 harder years, and the 7 really hard years, or 6 really hard years, right? Into the seventh. And if you watch that, you have a covenant at the end. You have a covenant at the end. It's a perfect breakdown of what we're looking at here. Okay. Okay. So they can't do war. They can't do business. And so again, this is a 7 year or 1 year understanding, not 7 years. Okay. So keep the connection to the law in mind. It's what everyone fails to follow. They refuse to look at the law because they've been told the law doesn't exist anymore. But that's false, right? Hebrews 10 tells us that he puts it into our hearts. When we truly believe, he puts it into our hearts and into our minds. It's how we know that we are sinning. All right. So this is still the law of the new wife. Listen, fulfill her week, right? This is the first wife. This is the one he didn't want at first. Um, and he got, he wanted Rachel, but he got Leah, right? And so he worked 7 years, 7 easy years for the love that he had for Rachel, but he got Leah instead. Now, this is going to be reversed in the end, but he got Leah, and he was all upset. Laban says, "Well, we can't give the youngest before the oldest, even though they're twins, by the way." And so what ends up happening here is he's told, "Okay, you have to work 7 years, but because we're making a deal here, you still have to give her her 1 week. Give her her week, right? Fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the service, also for the service which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 other years. 7 other years. Do you read that? Put it in context. Fulfill her week, and we will give thee, fulfill her week, 1 year, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve me yet 7 other years. So this is an extra year over and above. Okay? So this 1 week remains intact. But again, what's occurred here? He got married, right? And he has a new wife. He's angry about that fact, right? He agrees to work the 7 more years, but those are 7 harder years because he didn't expect to be working 14 years to get the one he wanted, right? 7 harder years. Genesis 31:41 again breaks this down. The first 7 years is the easy years, but the second 7 years plus 6 years are the tribulation periods. Okay. All right. But again, we have a new wife. So he tells him to fill 1 week and he can have her. That goes along with the law. That is 1 year. Just because the law, you never saw the law until Moses' time, doesn't mean it didn't exist back before. Much of the law came from things that happened throughout these periods. Okay? But he must complete the whole 7 year period as part of the contract. Whatever is true above must be true here as well. Okay? So over and over again, we see this coming together. 70 weeks is not 490 years. 1 week is not 7 years. The Bible doesn't say that. It says it's 70 years. It all interconnects exactly the way God said it would, right? From the very beginning. Daniel 9, then you go to 24, 25, 26, right? He's breaking it down. Gabriel broke it down for us. All right. So let's finish this out with an explanation of the breakdown above. Jesus comes back for the first 3.5 years of trumpets judgment. Okay? And at that time, he will save a remnant of people, right? After the second rapture. They will fly, right? We went through seals, 7 years of seals already. And they will fly away to a safe place until the last 3.5 years of trumpets is complete. All right. So how do we break down time altogether? So in order to understand this timeline, we need a few verses that help us to properly break down the time periods that we talk about above. Okay? Psalms 90, verse 10. Now, some people have tried to take this away because it talks about flying away, and they tried to turn it into a rapture verse. It is not. Most of the stuff is written to Israel, Judah in this case. Okay? Psalms 90:10, and I didn't write it here. You can go look at it. I show it in probably video after video after video after video. Okay? And here we're told that a generation is 70 years. It's 70 years. But, and this is where people completely twist the truth. Okay? They break it down into whatever they want it to be, but we have to break it down according to God's law, right? According to what the Bible teaches to be true. We have but with labor and sorrow, and you can look those words up in the Strong's Concordance to see what they mean, but they essentially mean tribulation. Okay, so we've got 70 years, and then we have labor and sorrow, tribulation, and it will be another 10 years. Okay, and then it goes on to tell us that shortly, they use a different word, but I'm just making it simple. Shortly, they will fly away to a safe place. Okay. So this shortly or whatever is approximately 6 months, give or take. Okay. So we have 10.5 years. There's your 10.5 years tribulation right there. 70 years without tribulation, then 10.5 years of tribulation. So far. Okay. And we actually show a video showing two 70-year timelines. Remember, I've told you that several times already. All right, so Luke shows the beginning of tribulation, and Matthew shows the line to the end of tribulation. But we use the same 70-year periods for both. In the case of Luke, we have to include the law because it's when they first came into the land using the fig tree story in Luke 21. Um, and they came in the land, they only got half of Jerusalem at that point. Matthew takes in the other half of Jerusalem. Now they have all of Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. Okay? And from that day, that year, technically 1 year after that, because we have to have one full year, from the year after that, we start that count and move forward, and you have a 70-year count broken down in 62 plus 7 plus 1. Okay? Now Luke's slightly different. We have to take into account Leviticus 19:23 through 25, which is a 5-year period. And then we can start our count plus one more year for what you saw above, right? What you saw above for that 1 year, except it's going to happen beforehand. All right. 10.5 years are broken down as follows. We have 7 years of seals at the beginning. Okay, 7 years of seals at the beginning, where the two, and we have at the end, before the seal starts, just before the seal starts, there's going to be the first fruits rapture. Okay, the first fruits rapture. That's the pre-trib. Okay, then we have 7 years of seals, where most of the church, 90%, will remain behind for, okay, because they didn't know the time of his coming. The Bible tells us that we have to know. And at the beginning, where the two Gentile brides are taken. Okay, so we have the first bride pre-trib, the second bride at the end of seals. Okay, we have a first fruits and the main harvest according to God's 3-part harvest. Okay, the main harvest of the church. And then Jesus comes down to stay for a while at this second harvest. And then we have a first 3.5 years of trumpets, during which Jesus and a remnant are rebuilding the city and the streets. Okay, first 3.5 years of trumpets. All right, so below you will see the final 3.5 years. We've looked at that already up above in the verses, but here we're going to look at the verses from Revelation 12:14. Okay, it says we'll see the final 3.5 years after they fly away, as the text says. Satan is coming. Jesus is taking them to safety. Revelation 12:14, and it's a replay of the remnant coming back, as I said earlier, in Ezra and Nehemiah. All right, now this will throw a few people because we've already been talking about this, but Jesus is actually here already. And here's some proof. Thus saith the Lord, I am returned unto Zion, and I will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. Jerusalem shall be called a city of truth, and the mountain of the Lord of hosts, the holy mountain. Zechariah 8:3. Notice these are saying Mount Zion, okay? Not Mount of Olives at the very end. He has come to dwell during the tribulation to rebuild what was destroyed, but not until 7 weeks of years are complete. Okay? That's the seals time. All right, but they could not build until now. Why? Because the seals was going on. We had the Antichrist, we had war, we had all this stuff going on, and they could not come back and build. So Zechariah 8:9 and 10. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, let your hands be strong. Ye that hear in these days these words by the mouth of the prophets, which were in the day that the foundation of the house of the Lord of hosts was laid, that the temple might be built. Right? This is the first half of trumpets. Okay, here's what everybody's been looking for. For before those days there was no hire for man, nor any hire for beast. Neither was there any peace to him that went out or came in because of the affliction. For I set all men, every one, against his neighborhood. Zechariah 8:9 through 10. So here he is back, and they're helping to rebuild the temple and the streets, okay, and the walls, etc. All right, so up to now they were in the first half of tribulation, right? Seal judgment or time of Gentiles, and had been removed from the land. Now many have returned and they are ready to rebuild the city. Okay? Most have been killed by this time. So this is only a remnant. And as we have seen, the Messiah is with them. But why has he been cut off? We already saw this, but we're going to get into it. Okay? Deeper. 10.5 years into tribulation and 3.5 years into trumpets period. Okay? That 10.5 years includes that 3.5 years, the first 3.5 years of trumpets. All right, we saw this earlier. The time of Satan, the last 3.5 years. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now has come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. Revelation 12:7-10. Okay? The church has been taken. The church has been taken, and now we're in the last. We've got city, streets, sanctuary, whatever. Everything is in the process of being built. But remember, when you read the story, they had to stop for a period of time, right? And then they had to come back. They had to wait for a new king. Yeah, Ezra and Nehemiah. Therefore, rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man child. And here it is. Up above, remember I showed you that timeline. I said, this takes us up to the 3.5 year period. Here it is. And this is the last 3.5 years. This is adding up to 14 years. Okay? And to the women were given 2 wings. Remember, they flew away. They were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the face of the serpent. The last 3.5 years with the war going on with Satan. Okay? There's our last 3.5 years to make up the 14. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water. There's our flood again, just as we saw in Daniel, the last 3.5 years. After the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. This is our story. We just saw the same thing broken down in Daniel, and we know now that this is the last 3.5 years. Okay? The highlighted verse pertains to the complete 14-year timeline given above, right? So this is the last 3.5 years. We have 10.5 years, right? The first 7 years of seals, the first seven, or the whole 7 years of seals, and then the first 3.5 years of trumpets, leading to the coming of Satan, and the 3.5 years during which he's here, giving us the full 14 years, and 7 years of seals, 7 full years of trumpets. Okay? Think of it as 2 parts, 7 years, broken into 4 3.5 year periods. Okay? They're broken down very similarly on both ends. And there you have it. All right, so we see this as the same 3.5 year reference we showed in Psalms 90, verse 10. After the 10.5 years, we have 7 plus 3.5, right? 10.5 years. The we fly away, which was also referenced to Daniel 9:26's 10.5 year point, to the cutoff. And right here, We just saw the other 3.5 years right there in Revelation. This would tell us the reason for Messiah's cutoff, because Satan has now been cast down to the earth. So we now know who the lowercase p prince is from the verses above. All right? That would be Satan. And we can see how they are able to rebuild some of the city and have some of it destroyed again. Remember, a few days after the rapture, we will see Israel destroyed and taken. All right? This will happen on May 14th of 2025. This day aligns with the second month and 17th day, which is also the day both of the other tribulations started in history. I'm still watching May 11th as a rapture, May 11th through the 13th as a rapture, leading to the May 14th destruction of Israel and the beginning of tribulation. These 2 days fall exactly where they're supposed to be. The fig tree story told us from the very beginning what day it was going to happen. We just had to put the piece together, and one can feel really stupid when you're sitting there staring at it and it's telling you that it started on this day. But then we have to understand that Israel, it says, is in these last days, they are considered Sodom and Egypt, spiritual Sodom and Egypt. Okay? Keeping that in mind, the same day Israel came into Egypt is the same day they left Egypt. The same day Israel became a nation, May 14th, 1948. Go to 1949, start your count, 5 years plus 70 years, whatever, and you start your count, and you're there, right? Just as it said. But the same day they became a nation on May 14th, 1948, is the same day they're going to leave in 2025. We're here, folks. We're here. Pray. Luke 21:36. Pray that you be worthy to escape all that's coming upon the earth. To escape the first fruits, the main harvest at the end of seals, the final remnant and trumpets. Jesus returns at Feast of Tabernacles, or the day before, on the 14th day of the 7th month, at the end. We're here, folks. It's time. You need to awaken now, just as Jesus said. You need to awaken to the time of his coming. You truly do need to believe, because that's what the Bible showed in all of its um, stories, right? All of its patterns throughout the entire Bible. It shows that there was a small group who believed, and those who believed and knew the exact date, they left, they went. Jesus says it in Luke. My people don't even know the time of my coming. They don't even know. I'm here in front of them, and they don't even know the time of my coming. They don't know the day that they're in. People are looking for years from now. They're looking for an antichrist. It will not show up until the 3.5 to 4 year period. They're looking for a temple, but the body is the temple. They're looking for the wrong thing. They're looking for a physical temple, and Scripture, especially Old Testament Scripture, talks about, and I think it's in the New Testament. Um, it tells us that it'll be a temple built with no hands. They are looking for the wrong thing because they've been taught from Matthew at the end. They've been taught from Daniel 9 that it's a 7 year tribulation. They have no idea that tribulation is going to come upon that 90% of the church that's going to remain behind. And many won't even believe when it does happen, because they didn't go And all these preachers are still here having taught false teachings. And they're going to believe in what the world has to tell them, like aliens, or that some nation used a secret weapon that made people disappear, right? All over the world at the same time, randomly. The church won't even believe it when it happens because they did not go, because they don't understand the truth of Scripture, of God's law of the harvest. It's time. And for those who may listen to this later afterwards, there is hope. If you die, it will be okay. As long as you die believing in Jesus Christ as your Savior. Do not take the mark. If you must die, it's okay, because you will be revived. Hosea 6:2, you will be revived at the end of trumpets. And you will help to rule with Christ on the earth for 1,000 years. That's what it tells us. Okay? And there are those who will live through this time period as well. All right. That's all I've got for this one. It's not a real long one this time, thank goodness. Um, yeah, I pray for you all. I pray that anybody listening to this will truly come to Christ and will understand truly the time that they're in. Okay? I hope you will see the truth in Scripture, not the truth in man's teaching. All right, God bless everyone. And I hope someday that anyone who hears this, anyone who listens, will someday come and see me, and uh, I would love to get to know anyone who does. All right. Again, God bless, and I hope to see you all later. Bye now.